The story of Refused transcends music history. The story of Refused reads more like an epic folktale than anything else. Everybody that was around during the time has their own kind of retelling of the events, and the story can get muddled depending on who you hear it from. But today, you're going to be hearing it from me, and I'm going to tell you the exact day, the exact time in history that Refused frickin' die. Hey ladies, how's it going? Dan Frampton here, and if you're like me, you didn't even believe that Sweden is a place, okay? This might even be news to you through this video. Well, I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you, but Sweden is an actual country where actual people live, okay? I know it seems like some sort of weird fantasy land, but no, Sweden exists, and Refused happened to be the biggest name in punk to come out of this friggin' country. And before they changed the world of hardcore, before they transcended punk music, they were just writing kind of youth crew style meat and potatoes hardcore. Their first record would come out in 1994, okay? In October, on Bite America Records. And right away, it's tight as hell. David Sandström on the drums is just killing it. And this is before Dennis would develop his more screamy style vocal. Right now he's kind of just yelling. This record over here shows a lot of potential, but it doesn't really have its own identity yet. So my verdict on this thing is that the sperm is inside the egg, but the Refused baby has yet to form. It's not a bad little record, but it does get a little long in the tooth, a little boring halfway through. But before the even month is out, they're putting out another EP. And this EP comes out in November of 1994 on Pure Noise Records. There's a little bit of a guitar player switch up going on here. And the sound does evolve a little bit into this more metallic thing than rather this meat and potatoes, youth crew style kind of hardcore. And back on the last record, This Might Be the Truth, there was like gang style vocals, you know, the whole onslaught of what you would expect through that kind of youth crew wannabe band at the time. And that was like kind of at the tail end of every band wanting to be a youth crew style band. So it didn't really catch on, so they're like, how about we do a little bit of metallic stuff going on here? But this record here, it fails to kind of like define its own identity as well. But the Refused baby is starting to form inside the womb. Burn It is an awesome opener on this EP, but my favorite song on it is called The Real. So they'd be touring on this stuff, you know, not really making that big of a name for themselves, still playing basements, just like really hustling, trying to fucking get out there, trying to make a name for themselves. And that's when, in 1996, Victory would drop this record here, Songs to Fan the Flames of Discontent, coming out on June 7th, 1996. This is the record where we're going to start to see Dennis change his vocal style to that screamy type vocal that we come to know and love from him. They're drawing from all sorts of influences on this thing. They got a bit of hardcore, they got a bit of punk, they got a bit of metal, it's a little bit emo, it's a little bit screamo, but it's starting to sound like Refused. It's fast, tight, memorable, aggressive, in your face. The riffs and vocals on this thing are so hard, and some of my very favorite Refused songs happen to be on this thing. Hook, Line, and Sinker and Rather Be Dead would go on to be classics in their catalog, and Rather Be Dead has a very special place in the whole folklore of this band. And we're going to be getting to that in a little bit, but right here, this is where Refused are fucking born. 2 years would go by, and before the Refused baby could even learn to walk, this is when Refused are fucking dead. They're working on this record here, The Shape of Punk to Come, because yeah, sure they're out there and the hardcore kids are kind of liking them, but they want to explode, okay? They want to really make their name in the whole punk history or whatever, so they're out there crafting this record, The Shape of Punk to Come. The legend goes that during the recording of this record, tensions were growing to a boiling point that they couldn't even stand being in the same room with one another, so they kind of knew this was going to be their last record. They kind of knew they were just going to try to tour it and try to get it out there and then kind of break up, because the song Refused Are Fucking Dead is actually on this thing, showing that they knew that they were going to be fucking dead once this thing came out. So there's a bit of like pre-planned, premeditated feeling towards this after all is said and done. But before it's all said and done, they've recorded it. It's ready, and now they are touring America. And it's on this tour that they break up. They break up halfway through the tour, and they're like, okay, we're no longer a band anymore, but we have this one last show to play, and now everybody kind of knows it's their last show. And it's just in this house. And the legend goes that this is just some basement show, and apparently 500,000 people were there, because everybody has their telling of events of what went down in the basement of that house show. But what we do know for sure is that the cops shut this thing down to really end Refused on a high note. And not only did the cops shut it down, they shut it down during the refrain, during the sing-along, during the chant,
"Rather be alive."
So that's where Rather Be Dead gets its significant place in this timeline. And you can just picture it, the fans just screaming, "Rather be alive," as there's no more power, the cops cut it all down, they're kicking everybody out, and everybody's just screaming, "Rather be alive." What a poetic ending. What a poetic death to this band. You can't get much better than that. But if you didn't notice during the telling of that legend, they were still playing a basement show off the back of The Shape of Punk to Come. Now the band disintegrates. Now the band no longer exists. But now is the time where this band absolutely explodes off the song New Noise. Once the video for New Noise hits like the airwaves or whatever, people are loving it. They can't believe what they're hearing. What is this stuff? This sounds like hardcore screamy music, but the guys are dressed up so fancy. What am I witnessing? And then so many people witnessed what they witnessed and then were so inspired by it. Because this isn't just a punk record. This isn't just a hardcore record. It is all those things. It is upfront and in your face. It is highly charged and political and sends a really strong message, but they're dabbling in a little bit of jazz, a little bit of electronica, and they're melding it all together. The Shape of Punk to Come is probably a perfect record. And it might actually be in my top 3 most played records of all time. So that need for perfection, that drive to create a perfect record is what ultimately killed this band. But it didn't kill every member of it, because Dennis would go on to play in like a gazillion other bands, most notably the International Noise Conspiracy, which were an okay band, kind of more of like a dancey indie type vibe. And the drummer, David Sandström, who's very talented in his own right, went out and did his own thing. He started this band called Text, then he did his own like solo stuff. But then in 2012, they did a little bit of a reunion tour. And this is like fucking 14 years after this legend, okay? These guys have not got to experience what it was like to be in a popular band while the popular band was going on. And now it might be a little bit too late. But they take those classics out on the road, and I'm happy to say that I was lucky enough to be at one of those shows, and I will say that Refused still fucking had it. Dennis was a wild man up there, and the band was so fucking tight. I'm so happy that I got to see these guys during their like comeback run, but I know it wouldn't have been anything compared to that house show that was shut down by the cops while everyone was screaming, "Rather be alive." But that's neither here nor there. After the success of this comeback tour, they're like, let's put out new music. So they put out this album over here called Freedom, and they really shouldn't have, because this thing fucking sucks. I don't know what they're doing with these like funky guitar riffs. Funky guitar riffs are not Refused. This thing is not heavy. This is just like a legacy rock and roll album with maybe a little touch of heavy metal. Gone is the edge. Gone is the rebellious nature of Refused. There's some pretty cool moments on this thing, don't get me wrong, they're very good musicians, but by and large, this thing sucks and does not need to exist. But I think they knew that, so they were like, okay, give us one more chance, because 4 more years are gonna go by, 2019 arrives, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do this thing called war music. We're a political band, remember? So now it's not just like legacy rock and roll. Now it's like forced political nonsense. I don't know what they're doing on this thing. What revolution are you trying to lead, Dennis? It's a little bit louder, it's a little bit heavier than Freedom, but not by much. It's just straight up wank ass bad music. So yeah, 1998, that was the year that Refused fucking died. And they could have got back in 2012 for a reunion thing, and that would have been chill, and that would have been cool, but those last 2 records have no right to exist. They could still be touring off the notoriety of The Shape of Punk to Come. And I understand you want to be creative, you want to put out new stuff, you want to challenge yourself as an artist, but I don't know if that was the best decision based on the music that I heard. And I think they all might be a little bit too old and brittle to be putting out a hardcore record at this stage in the game, but it's clear that they lost all the drive that they had when they were actually Refused in the 90s. So off the name that they made for themselves like fucking 30 years ago, they get to play big venues now, and that must be pretty cool for them, but nobody knows what it would have been like if they just kept going. So yeah, Refused are fucking dead. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you're cool as hell, and until my next upload, you can watch another upload.